And today our discussion is about the day. Yeshua said there are 12 hours in a day. Satan, the adversary, has changed and altered every element of created time. He changed from when a year begins, from spring to winter. When a month begins, from new moon to illogically haphazard day on a calendar. When a week begins, from moon phases to pagan name gods. When a day begins, from sunrise to midnight or sunset. Hours in a day are changed from 12 to 24. And this is our discussion today. And we've already done 4 episodes. The year begins in the spring. New moon day begins with the month begins with new moon. And the weeks begin with moon phases. And then a day begins in the morning. So today we are discussing why is there 24 hours in a day. Well, the idea of calling a 24-hour cycle a day comes from Babylon.
Have you ever wondered why the wristwatch strapped to your arm, assuming you still use one, your mobile screen, or any other clock in the world shows 12 numbers signifying 12 hours? Our world's measuring system has 24 hours divided into 2 parts, a day lasting 12 hours and a night lasting 12 hours. 1 hour contains 60 minutes, which also have 60 seconds each. Each second is then divided into 1,000 milliseconds. The Egyptians and Babylonians, who first divided the day into smaller parts, used a duodecimal, that is base 12, and sexagesimal, that's base 60, numeral systems. That obviously begs the question, why base 12 and base 60? The reason is very simple and yet quite surprising. Yes, believe it or not, the structure of our fingers is precisely the reason. The number of finger joints on each hand, excluding the thumb, makes it possible to count to 12 by using the thumb. The 24-hour day concept comes from the ancient Egyptians. They divided the day into 12 hours with devices like shadow clocks, and then added 1 hour to each end, one for the twilight and one for the end of the day. Later, a T-strapped bar was made by Egyptians, which was calibrated to divide the time between sunrise and sunset into 12 parts. Nighttime was divided into 12 hours, based on the observation of stars. The Egyptians had a system of 36 star groups called deacons, chosen so that on any night, one deacon rose 40 minutes after the previous one.
Okay, well, Scripture says there's 12 hours in a day. Genesis 1:5, and Jehovah called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day. The period that is called evening in Genesis 1:5 means dusk, and is a period that lasts from 12 noon until 6 p.m. But this verse in Genesis 1:5 says that there was a period called evening, and that's noon until sundown. And then a period called morning, from sunrise to 12 noon. And that completed a 12-hour day. John 11:9, Yeshua answered, "Are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he doesn't know, because he sees the light of this world."
In Scripture, there are 12 hours in the day, not 24. The idea of a 24-hour cycle for the day comes from ancient Babylon. The 24-hour day is a picture of mixture. Yahweh always separated the night from the day. the darkness from the light. They were never commingled and treated as one time period. 2 Corinthians 6:14 says, "And what communion hath light with darkness?"
Hence, these terms in Scripture mean the following things. Morning, sunrise until noon. Evening is noon until sundown, dusk or twilight. Night is after sundown until or before dawn the next morning. That would be total darkness. A day is a 12-hour cycle from sunrise to sunset. The Hebrew word for day is yom, and it most often means from sunrise to sunset, or a period of 12 hours. And Messiah established that when he said the day was 12 hours.
Morning began at sunrise and ended at 12 noon, and the evening began at 12 noon and ended at sundown. Now we realize that the entire period being spoken of in Genesis 1:5 is a 12-hour day, as Yeshua said in John 11:9.
Okay, relative hours.
Relative hours, Hebrew singular sha'ah zamanit, I hope that's correct, is a term used in rabbinic Jewish law that assigns 12 hours to each day. A relative hour has no fixed radical, but changes with the length of each day, depending on summer, when the days are longer and the nights are shorter, and in winter, when the days are shorter and the nights are longer. Even so, in all seasons, a day is always divided into 12 hours, which inevitably makes for a longer hour or shorter hour. All of the hours mentioned by the sages and in other rabbinic writings refer strictly to relative hours. That from Wikipedia. Another feature of this ancient practice is that, unlike the standard modern 12-hour clock that assigns 12 o'clock p.m. for noon time, in the ancient Jewish tradition, noontime was always the 6th hour of the day, whereas the first hour began with the break of dawn by most exponents of Jewish law. And here we see a graphic that shows us this sunrise to sunset with the numbers laid upon it.
Yeah, and I'll leave all these links below so you can look them up for yourself. So a Hebraic day's hour can be between 42 to 72 minutes, depending on the seasons. And it can even vary by the day, as the time of sunset and sunrise differ from day to day and season to season. If the day's hour is longer, then the night hour will be shorter, and vice versa. As shown here, that the longer day in the summer, because you have a lot more sunlight, and shorter day in the winter. So in John 19:14 to 15, Messiah was standing before Pilate at about the 6th hour. And interestingly enough, in Matthew 27:44 to 45, Messiah was already on the cross at the 6th hour. Okay, well, we're going to read about this. Here are the verses, John 19:14 to 15. Now it was the preparation day of the Passover, and about the 6th hour. And he said to the Jews, "Behold your king." But they cried out, "Away with him, crucify him." Pilate said to them, "Shall I crucify your king?" The chief priests answered, "We have no king but Caesar." Then, the story in Matthew 27:44-45 says, "Even the robbers who were crucified with him reviled him with the same thing. Now from the 6th hour until the 9th hour, there was darkness all over the land."
How could Yeshua be in both places at the same time? Or how could the Gospels contradict each other? Before we attempt to answer this question, we need to know the times of the day according to the Jews and the Romans. The Jews and Romans used different methods of timekeeping during the Roman era. The Roman day began at midnight. That's 12 a.m., according to our clocks. Their Roman 6th hour would be literally the 6th hour from midnight, or 6 a.m. Today, our Gregorian calendar counts civil hours from midnight, similar to the way the Romans did. The Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke all use the Jewish standard for timekeeping, but John used the Roman standard. In John 19:14 through 15, Yeshua stood before Pilate about the 6th hour, the Roman time of 6 a.m. in the morning. This was before his journey to the cross, where he was crucified. In Matthew 27:44 and 45, Yeshua is on the cross at the 6th hour. The 6th hour from the Jewish beginning of day at 6 a.m. would be noon.
There is no contradiction at all. Matthew's 6th hour was about noontime, Jewish time, and John's 6th hour was 6 a.m. Roman time. This has always been a question to me when I've studied the crucifixion. It's been such a contradiction, and I'm happy to find this out. It's been good for me. So Yeshua stood before Pilate about 6 a.m., was crucified about 9 a.m., and was on the cross from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. There was darkness over the whole land from noon, the 6th hour, to 3 p.m., the 9th hour. This shows the Gospels are in perfect harmony, as all Scripture is given by the inspiration of Elohim. 2 Timothy 3:16. And here it is, darkness over the whole land, and that's from the 6th hour of noon till the 3rd hour. The 9th hour. It'd be the 6th hour of noon until the 9th hour, right here. Okay, you might not know this, but Old Testament time, there were only 3 night watches. There was an evening, a middle, and a morning. In the Old Testament, the time between sunset and sunrise was divided into 3 night watches. The proper Jewish reckoning recognized only 3 watches: the first or beginning of the watches, the middle watch, the morning watch. And these would last respectively from sunset to 10 p.m., the first watch, 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., the middle watch, and 2 a.m. to sunrise, the morning watch. And Brother Pete, here are those scriptures.
This is Lamentations 2:19. The first watch, sunset to 10 p.m. Arise and cry out in the night. At the beginning of the watches, pour out your heart like water before the face of Yahweh. Lift your hands toward him for the life of your young children who faint from hunger at the head of every street. In Judges 7:19, the middle watch, that is from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. So Gideon and the 100 men who were with him came to the outpost of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch, just as they had posted the watch, and they blew the trumpets and broke the pitchers that were in their hands. In Exodus 14:24, the morning watch, that is 2 a.m. to sunrise. Now it came to pass in the morning watch that Yahweh looked down upon the army of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and cloud, and he troubled the army of the Egyptians.
So Yeshua warns of the importance of apprehending the purposes of Elohim in prayer, worship during the night hours. He said this in Luke 12:35 to 40. Let your waists be girded and your lamps burning, and you yourselves be like men who wait for their master when he will return from the wedding, that when he comes and knocks, they may open to him immediately. Blessed are those servants whom the master, when he comes, will find watching. Assuredly, I say to you that he will gird himself and have them sit down to eat, and will come and serve them. And if he should come in the second watch, or come in the third watch, and find them, so blessed are those servants. But know this, that if the master of the house had known what hour the thief would come, he would have watched and not allowed his house to be broken into. Therefore you also be ready, for the Son of Man is coming in an hour you do not expect.
By the time of Messiah, the time between sunset and sunrise was changed and divided into 4 watches. The Roman influence and supremacy was established. The number of watches increased to 4 and were described in numeral order. That is, the first from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., the second from 9 p.m. to 12 a.m., the third from 12 a.m. to 3 p.m., and the fourth from 3 a.m., and the fourth from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. And this from the globalwatch.com.
So the fourth watch is mentioned in Matthew 14:25. Now in the fourth watch of the night, Yeshua went to them walking on the sea. 4 watches were also described in terms such as even, midnight, cock crowing, morning. And here's the verse in Matthew 26:34. Yeshua said unto him, Verily I say unto thee, that this night before the cock crow, thou shalt deny me thrice. Of course, we were taught there was a rooster in this story, but we were not aware when we grew up in our American world that there was an hour called cock crowing. And then also Mark 13:35, Watch ye therefore, for ye know not when the master of the house cometh, at even, or at midnight, or at the cock crowing, or in the morning. Now we're going to talk a little bit about temple sacrifices. Temple sacrifices morning and evening. We know that Yeshua's statement is true. There are 12 hours in a day because the morning and evening sacrifices in the temple were done within a 12-hour period as follows. 2 Chronicles 13:11. And they burn unto Jehovah every morning and every evening burnt sacrifices and sweet incense. The showbread also set they in order upon the pure table, and the candlestick of gold with the lamps thereof to burn every evening. For we keep the charge of Jehovah our Elohim, but you have forsaken him.
In Jewish tradition, prayers were usually offered at the time of the daily whole burnt offering. The historian Josephus, writing about the daily whole burnt offering, says that it was offered twice each day in the morning and about the 9th hour. That from Josephus Antiquities. Interestingly, these specific hours, for example, the 3rd or 6th or 9th hour, etc., were only mentioned in the New Testament, but not in the Old Testament.
So morning and evening, the special religious significance attached to this periodicity can be observed in the temple rites of regular morning and evening sacrifices and in the benedictions over the daily cycle in the morning and evening prayers. The benediction is the creator of luminaries in the morning prayer, and the benediction, who brings the lights, in the evening prayer. And here is King David, Psalm 55:17, saying, Evening and morning and at noon will I pray and cry aloud, and he shall hear my voice. Another change that we've had in our hours is called daylight savings time, and that is a clock change. Daylight savings time changes the hour of morning and evening prayers and worship time. Daylight savings time in the U.S. started as an energy conservation trick during World War I and became a national standard in the 1960s. Despite the fact that daylight saving time was introduced to save fuel, there isn't strong evidence that the current system actually was energy. And in September 2015, the American Academy of Sleep Medicine called for the end of daylight saving time clock changes.
1 hour of lost sleep sounds like a small change, but we humans are fragile, sensitive animals. Small disruptions in our sleep have been shown to alter basic indicators of health and dull our mental edge. When we shift clock forward 1 hour in the spring, many of us will lose that hour of sleep. In the days after daylight savings time starts, our biological clocks are a little bit off. It's like the whole country has been given 1 hour of jet lag. An abundance of accumulated evidence indicates that the acute transition from standard time to daylight saving times incurs significant public health and safety risks, including increased risk of adverse cardiovascular events, mood disorders, and motor vehicle crashes. That from the American Academy of Sleep Medicine.
So 1 hour of lost sleep makes a change in our brains. Doctors writing in a leading medical journal have put forth a case for doing away with daylight savings time, DST, transitions. They argue that these annual transitions to and from DST misalign biological clocks with long-term consequences for health. Daylight savings time transitions can affect a number of brain functions, including alertness and energy levels. When we talk about DST transitions and the relationships to light, we are talking about profound impacts on the biological clock, which is a structure rooted in the brain. And that's from the Medical News Today. And I'll have all these article links for you below. So morning and evening, the 1 hour clock change not only misaligns our biological clock, it also changes the time of the morning and evening hours of prayer. I don't know if you are watching. I know some people do keep those morning and afternoon hours of prayer. And maybe they're looking at the clock we have on the wall, or maybe they're looking up in the heavens as to when noon is. What do you think, Brother Pete, about, is there anything we can do about these time changes or this clock on our wall that's happened to us?
Well, I believe that our proper response is to just have a biblically based view of time. And that's mostly, and what I'm saying here is that we look to the scriptures when we read them, that we understand the clock they operated in, and second, that as we've seen, that time of day is established subservient to the things we see in nature. We see the sun move, and the clock is subservient. We might say today, what hour does the sun set? That means the sunset is under the dominion of the clock, as opposed to the sun sets at the end of the hours. That's what defines it or begins it. And so therefore, what are we saying? We should throw our watches and not look at our clocks? I don't recommend that. Some of us may change our timing. Maybe we should align our days to align with the sunrise and sunset. Go to bed when the sun is set or setting, and structure our day for the daylight, and observe and honor Yahweh in those hours.
Okay, thank you, Brother Pete. So the adversary has counterfeited everything about time that was set in place at creation. He has changed all the hours of the day and the night, and also the other 4 time periods that we've already discussed in the previous videos. So he's changed everything about time, including the hours. Today, our Gregorian calendar counts civil hours from midnight as the Romans did. 12 hours in a day in the Bible changed to 24 hours, and that was Babylon or Roman time. The 6th hour from noon was changed to 6 a.m. Roman time. 3 night watches were changed to 4 night watches Roman time. Hours of morning and evening prayer are changed twice a year by daylight savings time.
And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. That from Daniel chapter 7 and verse 25.
So don't forget to go to our website, lunarsabbathday.com, to access materials directly related to today's topic. Thank you for being here, and Yah willing, we'll be back next week.